Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here in Nashville, Tennessee, covering the Army Aviation Association of America's annual conference and trade show, #1 gathering of U.S. Army aviators from around the world to talk about budget, strategy, technology, and more with industry thought leaders as well as media. Here, our coverage is sponsored by Bell and Leonardo DRS, and we're here at the ACME Worldwide Enterprises, an iconic name for a company with Rick Jenkins, a United States Air Force veteran, who is the Vice President of Operations for ACME. So Rick, what you have is an incredible simulator with very, very authentic recoil and other characteristics. You know, it's amazing when you manhandle this around that you even replicate the slipstream of this helicopter-mounted Gatling gun. You know, everybody is looking for novel and innovative ways to save money, and high-fidelity training is the name of the game. Tell us a little bit about the company and why you guys are, you know, because you guys really are a leader in some of these technologies and the unique way you apply them.
Absolutely. So ACME Worldwide Enterprises is a leader in tactile technology, and what we're doing is we're bringing the force and feel of the real world into the simulation world, because those are important training points, particularly for gunners. Recoil is an endemic part of shooting a firearm, and the problem is a lot of the trainers out there don't include that technology, and it's important because that drives you off the target. And so with this trainer, what you're forced to do is you're forced to re-engage the target continuously. So like I said, ACME is a leader in tactile technologies. We do replica machine gun systems with full force recoil system that's patented to us, all electric, and we also do dynamic motion seats, which give you the force and sensation of flight or vehicle maneuver. So we're kind of an interesting kind of two-headed creature doing both aspects to that.
You know, it's really extraordinary that you think like, okay, you know, it's an electrically driven gun, but the combination of the recoil, combination of the fighting of the wind, the stress of seeing multiple targets that are shooting at you, right? I mean, you want to try to prioritize these and try to take them out. Really is quite exhausting, actually, after a couple of runs, right? I mean, so that's part of the other thing you guys are realistically trying to simulate. Sure. Tell everybody how many other complications you guys threw at this, because while I was doing it, they were jammed. I mean, walk us through all of the different elements of being a gunner, which is you know, far more complicated, I think, than some folks think it is.
It's a lot more sophisticated than people think. A lot of people think that it's easy just to point and shoot. In fact, we've created an entire generation of Call of Duty kids who can do combat on a joystick and think it's easy. Firing a firearm itself is a very difficult, complex process, and even more so when you're in the heat of battle, when everything can and will go wrong. So, and that's part of what we do with this simulation, is give you the capability to have those things go wrong. So you mentioned we're not only just providing force and feel, the recoil and the airstream loads on the barrel, but we're also giving you the capability to induce things that you can't do any other way, particularly at a range. So for instance, we can induce a misfire on this weapon and force you to, 1, to recognize it, and then 2, to correctly remediate it. And that's a muscle memory thing. And as we both know, that's an important element in your military training, where you develop that muscle memory and then you rely on it in a situation that's crucial to yours and your team members' lives, so that you don't have to think, you just rely on that training. So we give you the capability to train that. So we can do a misfire, we can do sluggish fire where the weapon begins to fire at a different rate and see if the gunners pick it up. We can do jams so that you can induce a situation where the ammo feed is something has gone wrong with that. So those are things that you can instantly apply, push of a button on this particular system. And that's all inherent in the electrical recoil system, because we can change the rate of fire dynamically and the force while the gunner is doing that, and see if they pick it up.
And one of the other things is that this is a non-armory item, right? So when you set this up at a squadron, whether a vehicle squadron or air squadron, or a training school, what you guys can do is you can leave it out in the open, right? It doesn't have to go back into the armory every night.
Yeah, it's an important piece of the training. So it's not a weapon. It can't be made into a weapon. And like you're saying, so that's an important piece in both the logistics and the support, because the weapon doesn't have to go into the armory. It doesn't have to be inspected. It's not shooting blanks, so we don't have to clean that. When you have ammunition, you have to put those in the armory. That has to be inspected. Then you have to transport it. It has to go under guard. Then the weapon has to be put back into the armor. All that is a logistics burden. So when we do this kind of training, we take all that cost out. So we're not only taking the cost of rounds out, we're taking the cost of the logistics and the support. And so on this particular trainer, in a 12 by 12 spot, we can do all of that training for multiple different weapon types on this one little platform.
And so something like this is about $250,000, right? Give or take, depends on volume and how many I order. But put into context, cost per flying hour, and I had a lot of fun doing this, had a decent accuracy rate, not nearly as high as I would have liked, but didn't embarrass myself. But talk to us a little bit about what just the ammunition I was shooting was more than $600, right? So walk us through, on a steady state basis, actually, how this actually pays for itself over time.
Sure. Okay, so let's start with ammunition alone. Okay, so ammunition comes in several different varieties. So simple ball ammunition on a small caliber weapon or smaller caliber weapon, a 30 cal, is about 75 cents a round. So when you make a 800 round pass on here, you're pretty close to about $700 in ammunition cost alone. That's ball ammo. So if you start doing things like armor piercing, incendiary, those kind of rounds, then your cost is going to increase. And let's make that step. Like I mentioned previously, we can do multiple different weapons on this type. So on a 50 caliber, now we're talking a much larger round, and those can go from $1 a round to $4 a round. The weapons vary between rate of fire at 450 rounds a minute to 3,000 rounds a minute. That's 50 rounds a second at 75 cents. So the ammunition cost alone is pretty intense. And then so that we add those logistic costs on top, right? The storage, the transfer of the weapons and so forth. And then think about the airframe costs. So getting an aircraft over the range has to be scheduled. So I have schedulers. Now I have fuelers that have to happen. I have to have an armorer to load the aircraft. I have to have range time. I have to have the crew up the front. I have to have the crew behind. And for some of these people, they may never have shot from a helicopter before. So part of what we're doing is that we make you more effective when you get to the range, so that when the first time you pull the trigger and that's 75 cents at 50 rounds a second, you're a lot more effective.
And you can network these sensors as well, right?
Sure, we can network this trainer together, and there's a couple ways that you might want to do this. So this is the rear of the aircraft, right? So where the gunners are operating. We can link this trainer to the front end simulator so that the air crew can be flying the trainer and the gunners are reacting to that. That's an important crew coordination ability, so that the gunners in the back can talk to the crew up the front and say, I'm taking fire from left, or I need to engage that target. Skipper, roll over to the side here, I got to get to that target, okay?
And how many of these have you delivered already, and what's sort of the growth strategy on it? I know you guys have been in the business for 25 years, but what's your strategy to try to expand the business base?
Sure, so we've been doing recoil weapons, full force recoil weapons, since about 2005. We have hundreds of these out in the field. We have product delivered to more than 16 companies or countries worldwide. Our growth strategy is kind of twofold. The first of which is kind of increase awareness and increase our customer base. We have customers that have come to us recurringly since 2005, but we want to introduce the product to new people and such. That's why we're at trade shows like this, to give people a lot more awareness of it. And then the second type of that is there's new weapon technology coming on board, and so we integrate those capabilities into our systems. And finally, the other thing that we do to kind of increase our growth is that we talk to the customer. And like folks here with like the 160th, our obvious premier aviation combat unit, and so we're getting their feedback and then incorporating their important training principles into the weapons.
And I know that even before I tried it, I asked you whether or not there was a basement version of this that would be available. Have you guys actually considered delivering these to people's basements? Because I can imagine you could spend hours of fun here, not even with pizza and beer. I mean, just hours of fun.
Sure, absolutely. It's surprising how fun it is. It's intense, and that that's that getting your heart rate going, and that's the excitement. It's like riding a roller coaster. It's that same kind of intensity, and it's surprising how difficult it is, and it really gives you a challenge that you want to go back to it over and over and over. So sure, yeah, we've talked to folks about basement possibilities. I've had people from bars ask me, "Hey, have you got one that we can put in a bar?" There's things like you could do this for a bachelor or bachelorette party. Kind of an interesting way to introduce yourself to the excitement of weapon firing.
Rick, Jenkins from ACME Worldwide Enterprises. Sir, thanks very much. Best of luck. Really quite an amazing product, whether or not you're putting into basements or actually improving America's and allied gunners. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the time to talk with you about a great product.
And also, by the way, have you ever considered like maybe the Coyote and the Roadrunner on the ACME logo, or is that kind of a Looney Tunes problem?
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers might have something to say about that, but we are, we're from Albuquerque, very much desert dwellers, and the Coyotes and the Roadrunners are our friends, so yeah, they're part of us even if they're not on the logo.
Beep, beep.
Beep, beep.